the loneliest moments a man will ever experience is when he's achieved that which he thought would deliver the ultimate, and in the end, it lets him down. For me, becoming a Navy SEAL is my version of gaining the whole world. If you don't have peace with your Creator, you won't ever experience any peace while you're here on Earth. I'm a Navy SEAL, I'm a rock star, living the dream, when in reality, underneath it all, I felt like I was deteriorating and falling apart. I really felt like I was just this dead man walking, and all I was looking forward to is a terrible thing to be living off of. It's just like maybe getting a little get back for my mentor overseas with what had happened with him.
Hello and welcome to the March or Die Show today. Glad to have you joining the conversation. This is the show where we do our best. We just do our best every single episode to give you both the perspectives and principles you need to march when it would be easier to stay where you are and die. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker. I am your host and excited again to have you here with us. If you have not yet subscribed to the show, whatever platform you're listening from, go ahead and subscribe. Do it now. We want you to have the content when it comes out. And it is an honor to have special guests with us. We've had this plan for quite a while. Chad Williams.
Thank you for getting me on here.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Have me on.
What's crazy is we're in Texas recording, and we both traveled from California to get here to record.
There's some irony to that.
so the planning, maybe we could have done better. But man, it's awesome to have you here. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, stoked.
The book is Seal of God.
Yep.
And actually, you handed me one. There it is. So those of you watching on YouTube, Seal of God, we're going to talk about some of your story here. I'd love to start with, we'll kind of work maybe backwards of where normally you'd start, but let's start with your faith story.
Okay.
How you came to Christ. If I could frame it like this, why your faith and your relationship with God is important to you, where that started, how that happened, and then we'll get into some of your SEAL story.
I would say that it happened while I was in the SEAL teams, and I put a lot into becoming a Navy SEAL thinking that was going to deliver the ultimate for me. There was never any point in my life where I didn't believe in God. I would say I was a Christian through and through. It's what I put on a dog tag.
Yeah.
But it was nothing more than like a family banner, really. Right. I mean, if I was accused of being a Christian, as they say, there probably wouldn't be enough evidence to convict me based off of the way that I was living my life out in town. So I would acknowledge God's existence. I would say, oh yeah, me and Jesus, we're cool. But in reality, I didn't have a real personal relationship with him.
Why would you have called yourself a Christian?
Because that's what my parents were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember we started going to church, and so that was just kind of the thing that we did. I never took any real personal ownership of it.
I got you. Yeah.
And I think that once I got to a certain point where, they didn't really have control over me anymore, so I didn't have to go. I wasn't going.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I finally had, become a SEAL, and I experienced that sort of highest high on that graduation day. I'll never forget what it was like. Walking out, I'm looking up in the sky thinking, Scott, who, was my mentor, Scott Helvenston, I'm thinking, we did this together. I got family, I got friends there. And it's like, you did it. You became a SEAL. It was one of the happiest, most fulfilling moments of my life. But the craziest thing was it didn't take more than 24 hours before I felt the wind coming out of that sail.
Yeah.
And everything spiraling downwards from that point forward. And I couldn't wrap my mind around why at the time. And it was years later while I was driving down the Silver Strand, I heard these words over the radio that nailed it. It was a Christian philosopher. And he says, one of the loneliest moments a man will ever experience is when he's achieved that which he thought would deliver the ultimate, and in the end, it lets him down. And so what he's referring to right there is something I believe every human being is familiar with, at least to some degree. Sometimes we talk about it as, the human condition, or we refer to it as the grass always being greener on the other side. We're not quite satisfied, fulfilled, or content.
If I could just get to this thing, I'd be happy.
Just want a little bit more.
Just a little
That's
bit more.
it. What do you want? I just want a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so we set up goals in life, these little achievements, and we develop a hunger for them. And that hunger leads to good stuff. It leads to the hard work, the blood, sweat, tears, determination, whatever it takes to get to that goal. And when you hit it, you eat it up, awards are passed out, recognition is made, you are satisfied. But what happens is that satisfaction doesn't last like you thought it would. But you don't panic here. You just kind of step back for a moment. You do a little introspect, and all of a sudden a light bulb goes off in the head. Maybe the reason this didn't give me the lasting fulfillment I was expecting is because I didn't go for something big enough. So I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
I need to raise the bar. I need to go climb that mountain higher. So now we're thirsting after the new goal and we're going after it and all the same stuff. You get there, you drink it up, you're satisfied. What happens? You're hungry, thirsty all over again. And it's like this vicious cycle, and seemingly there just is no end point.
Yeah.
But really, that's kind of the whole point to that quote of one of the loneliest moments a man will ever experience, when he's achieved that which he thought would deliver the ultimate, and in the end it lets him down. The big burning question is, what happens when you finally arrive at a place where you can't say, well, I'll just go to the next rung of the ladder?
Yeah.
Because you're at the last rung of the ladder. You can't say, I'll just climb this mountain a little bit higher, because you're at the peak of the mountain.
Yeah.
And just like all of the other times before, you're hungry, you're thirsty for something more, but this time there is no next.
Yeah.
That's where you get those words. And this isn't something unique to me, right? This is the human condition. And you see this oftentimes played out in the lives of people that did achieve their version of whatever the ultimate was, whether it be a movie star like Jim Carrey. You know, he says, I wish that people could become rich and famous and have everything that they ever wanted, so that they would know it's not the answer.
Right.
You know, or you even have Christian philosophers like C.S. Lewis. You know, if I find within myself desires in which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is I'm not meant for this world. And so we watch these movie stars, these professional athletes, they have everything the world has to offer, and yet their lives are falling apart.
Miserable.
Yeah. They're, you know, given over to substance abuse, you know, even depression and suicide. And we look at them and we go, why? Like, why, man? Don't you know what you have? Don't you know what people would trade just to be in your shoes? But maybe that's just it. Having all the world has to offer isn't really all that's cracked up to be. And I think Jesus put it best when he says,
he did that a lot.
What's it profit a
man?
Put
it best. Yeah.
If he gains that whole world, but in the end loses his soul. For me, becoming a Navy SEAL is my version of gaining the whole world. Looking back, I realized that my soul was not oriented correctly with my maker. And if you don't, this is it. If you don't have peace with your creator, you won't ever experience any peace while you're here on earth. And so I had the facade on, like I got it together. I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm a rock star, living the dream. When in reality, underneath it all, I felt like I was deteriorating and falling apart. I really felt like I was just this dead man walking. And all I was looking forward to is a terrible thing to be living off of. It's just like maybe getting a little get back for my mentor overseas with what had happened with him. So,
and all of that's very empty.
Yes.
And you realize there's nothing there.
Yeah, like revenge is a fuel, you know, and it burns bright, but it is not a healthy fuel to be burning on.
I thought you were probably going to say you felt empty because you realized that you should have become a Marine instead of a SEAL. That's what I thought you were going to say. So you went a completely different direction with that. But
maybe there was
another level. There was another level. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
So then how do you address that emptiness, that there's got to be more to this?
I was in a pretty nasty place mentally. And I mean, it just led to stupidity. I adopted the work hard, play hard, mentality. And, one night just ended up blackout, drunk and needing 26 stitches in my knuckles and for things I don't remember, and coming back to my hometown. And, my folks, they kind of did some tough love with me. They said, basically, you're not welcome at our home anymore if this is what you're going to do. I spread blood all over the walls of their house. I only saw the aftermath. I didn't remember it, like when it happened. So they're like, we're not going to be a crash pad. We're not the place where you just sleep it off.
You were still a SEAL then.
Yeah. And just wild. And I wish I could tell you I had remorse. I didn't have any remorse. I just knew, all right, I better play my cards here a little bit, because I have a keg of beer that I stashed in their garage that's under a tarp right now. And I want to go out and drink with my pals. And it was the previous nights before, what got me into that place was we stole 2 kegs of beer from a beer fest in Orange Circle. And all I had on my mind was getting to that next keg. And I could tell my dad's pretty serious about not letting me in the house, and I'm not going to force my way in, so I know what to do. I know they want me to go to church. I know they got some evening thing they're going to go to. So if I just go, I'll punch my card in at church, haven't been in a while, I'll make them happy. And then when they come back home, the night is still young. I'll fall off their radar and I'll go do what I wanted to do, win-win. And so I found myself agreeing to go. We go. And I'm looking at my watch, just timing it. When's this thing going to be over? I kind of know how these things go. And suddenly I got completely sucked in to the message. And it couldn't have been a better, more tailored message for exactly what, I was going through at that time. It's the story of Naaman in the Old Testament, who is a Syrian commander. He's had great success in battle. He's got this entourage of men that highly respect him. Even the king enjoys Naaman's company. So it's like this status that he has. is getting him into places. It's like the VIP meet and greets. He gets to rub shoulders with the king.
Right.
That's kind of how it is when you get to wear a trident or whatever. And so he's living this life, but it says Naaman had leprosy. And I'm learning, well, how serious is leprosy? Well, it's a little worse than a case of eczema. Jesus looking back specifically said nobody during the time of Naaman had ever been healed of leprosy.
It's going to kill you.
And so there it is. He's a dead man walking. So much for all of this success, so much for this sort of outward persona as a mighty man of valor, when in reality, underneath it all, he's literally deteriorating and falling apart. He's this dead man walking. And that's exactly what I related to. Yeah. I wear the armor of being a team guy and this and that, but underneath it all, I felt like I was a dead man walking. So I'm on the edge of my seat listening to this just play out, vicariously living through it. And what happened was Naaman had to go 200 miles into enemy-occupied territory to go visit this man of God. And he was told he will heal you of your leprosy. The unsung hero in the story is just this little servant girl that spoke up. She's the evangelist. She just says, look, if only my master would go see the prophet who's in Samaria, he would heal him of his leprosy. So he gets there. He's got his entourage there. And this prophet doesn't even come out to greet him. And his ego is really bothered by that. And he gets told to just go dip himself in the Jordan River 7 times. And when he comes up, he'll have brand new skin. He's furious. And he just leaves in a rage. And as he's leaving in this rage, his men are running up to him. And I mean, if he continues in that direction, that's the way of death. They're pleading with him. They're saying, look, Naaman, if this guy came out and gave you some big, great thing to do, you would have done it. I mean, I'm using my imagination. It's like if he was given an obstacle course to run or like go over broken glass with bare feet, like he would be like, show me where to start. Like, give me a rite of passage to earn it. But because it's just a simple thing, just go wash and be clean, it seemed like a foolish thing.
Yeah.
And the message in there was just the foolishness of the preaching of the cross. It's foolishness to those that are perishing.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed like foolishness to Naaman, but something these guys said, it broke through. And it wasn't genius or brilliant, but that's just how God works. He could really set off a butterfly effect in your head. I'll never forget, there was another team guy, I don't think you would mind me dropping his name. He's a Christian team guy out there, Jeff Bramstead. He said something that rocked my world. And when I brought it back to him, it was like he didn't remember that he said that. And it's just so funny how God can use something.
Yeah.
I was telling him, because he kind of knew where I was at. And I told him, Jeff, I've tried the whole, pray and this and that before. I've gone to church and I've never experienced any kind of a change. And he goes, well, Chad, I don't know what it is, but I do know this much, that God will not work with you until you give him an empty template to work with. That stuck in my head for almost 2 years. I knew right when he said that I had never, when I prayed before, given God an empty template to work with.
What does that mean, empty template?
Give him
take away everything. The work, take away.
I pictured it as a table of all of my pet sins, and I'm willing, God, to give you. I'll empty off 90%.
I'm not holding anything back
of
from
this
you.
table. Yeah.
Right.
But there's a couple things that I never had any intention of letting go of, but I thought 90% was a good deal.
Sure.
And that's why
God's lucky to get 90%.
Yeah. I'm like, you're getting so much.
Right. And that's so much to offer you.
That's why I never experienced any real change, because it's like the scriptures say, it's like a broken and contrite heart the Lord will not turn away. So I was very transactional. And he said that, and what it did is it ripped away my excuse. Because my excuse was I tried it and it didn't work. And he pointed that out, and now I know I haven't really tried it, but at the same time, I just wasn't in a place where I was ready to let go.
That's good.
And so he says that. And when this night, March 14, 2007, it happened, and I'm hearing the story of Naaman and what he's required to do, I think that whatever these guys said, God used the same way that God used those words from Bramstead. Because when I brought it back, I told Jeff, like, I want you to know something, man. Like, I became a Christian.
Right.
And I told him he goes, I said that? I'm like, yeah, you said that. He goes, are you sure I said that? I was like, that was, you don't remember that? Dude, it tormented me at night. I couldn't sleep. I'd be on my pillow sometimes. He's like, doesn't sound like something I would say.
So I was on a podcast yesterday, and a guy asked me, what are some of the conversations that were turning points in your life? And I told him the story I've told often about a man in our church who like pulled me aside and like, you're out of control. this is not okay, whatever. Well, I've relayed that to this guy before, and I was like, hey, I've told this story, and he's like, I don't remember that at all.
Crazy.
I'm like, dude, this is like one of the turning points of my life.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I don't remember it at all.
Yeah.
But God uses it, right?
And Naaman is literally about to have that turning point. As these guys are saying these things, somehow God uses what they said, and I think Naaman gets it, that it's not about the water.
Yeah.
It's about the God of Israel, that if I'm just faithful, if I humble myself before him, he will do the heavy lifting. And so when he made that turning point 180 to go back that direction, there was so much more going on, I think, than just a physical turn of direction. There was a change of mind, a change of attitude, a change of heart. It's like this walk he understood. In order for me to live, like the selfish I, must die. This is like a walk to my own funeral. And I don't doubt that as he's peeling away that armor that needed to go, I imagine his men probably saw for the first time the real Naaman underneath it all, because when we have some type of vulnerability, we don't air it out and let everyone see it. We cover it up. And so he's covered in his armor and his clothing. Maybe they're seeing the real Naaman, the vulnerable Naaman for the first time. And he goes and dips himself in humility those 5, 6, 7 times. It's a number of completion in the Bible. And when he came up, in the Hebrew, the literal picture, the language is he had brand new skin like that of a baby. I remember being on the edge of my seat listening to this, so captured and in. And I just felt like I got to the end of a really good movie, and I've been here before, where I was so inspired by that. It's so cool it works out for that guy in the end. But I know where we're at in this movie. The credits are about to roll and the lights are about to come back on, and now it's time to kind of stop living vicariously through a character. It's time to go out and face, just all of the clutter of life and debris we got to deal with. But really what happened that night was, the credits didn't roll right there. It changed from, like, just as God has provided this salvation for Naaman, he's done the same thing for you and I. And I understood the gospel in a way I never understood it before from an Old Testament story. It was broken down that looked just like Naaman. We have this sort of outward persona. We're a certain person in front of our family and our friends. But like, who are you really underneath it all? Like, who are you when you're in your room and the lights are off and all you're left with is your own thoughts? And so Naaman had his leprosy, and we all have a disease underneath it all. You can call it, SIN positive. It's sin. And just as Naaman couldn't do anything to get the leprosy off of himself, there's nothing we can do to get sin off of ourselves. But God provided a salvation, not in the form of dipping into the Jordan River. But what God did was he dipped, you could say, his son down into the world on a rescue mission. That's Jesus. Named Jesus, as the angel said, to save his people from their sins. And so, spiritually speaking, we're all lepers apart from God. We're all spotted and blotted and blemished in it. But Jesus was holy and pure without blemish. And then he goes to the cross with purpose. And the picture that really stuck with me was that at the cross, Jesus traded skin with you and I. He took our leprosy, as it were, our sin upon himself, so that we could be switched and lavished with God's grace and mercy, as though we lived the perfect life that Christ had lived, conquering sin, conquering death, rising again. And that's the God's way of vindicating him. He was no blasphemer as he was accused. And then he declares from that resurrected life, because I live, you also shall live. I mean, that night, I'll never forget it. I know the date, March 14, 2007. It just clicked. And it was almost like it was always there. I grew up going to church. How is it that it was like a vapor? I imagine it when you see someone smoking a cigarette and you get to see that vapor floating through the air, but it hasn't hit your nostril yet. It was almost like it was always right under my nose. And for the first time, like I breathed it in, the aroma of the gospel. And so I fully committed my life to Christ that night.
That's incredible.
And it's just like the scriptures say, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creation. Old things pass away, behold, all things become new. It wasn't a big experiential feeling. It was more of almost like in the Greek, the gnosko, that knowledge is like, I comprehended, like, wow, I've been forgiven of my sin. And it was a sense of gratitude. And it was like Paul, when he asked the Lord after his salvation on Damascus Road, like, Lord, what would you have me do? I immediately was just like, I owe you everything. You're my shot caller. You're my assault leader. Like, what would you have me do?
It's that empty vessel you're talking about. Empty table.
Show me how you want me to shoot, move, and communicate. Like, I am all yours. And it was weird because I got almost like this instantaneous, like, glimpse into the future of, I'm going to have you doing what that man on stage is doing at some point. And fast forward, when I got out of the teams, that's what
How much longer would it be before you get out of the teams?
So that was 2007, and by May 2010. Yeah,
Okay, a couple more years.
Yeah.
Had you been deployed?
No.
So that was before your deployment?
Before deployment, yeah.
If you hadn't gone through that process of hit the peak, find out there's nothing there, it's empty, if you hadn't gone through that, do you think you would have received that message that night the way that you did?
I don't think I would have, to be honest. Unfortunately, some people, they have to learn the hard way, and I'm one of those people.
I think it's most people.
Yeah.
It looks different for different people, but yeah.
I always admire the people that will take the shortcut in life. It's like I'm trying to be that person now. Like when I have somebody that's wiser than I am, they try and show me the way.
Yeah.
It's like you could save yourself 10 years if you just listen to me right now. Because I had people that offered me the shortcut along the way, plenty of times. So now I'm looking for those, those shortcuts, those chutes and ladders. Like show me.
You needed to get out of your own way, though, right?
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about this recently, just about personal insecurity. People are very good, and different people are better than others at projecting an image. It's an image they want. Sometimes it's a carefully crafted image. And in the military, it's very easy to project an image of how strong I am, how confident I am, how good I am at what I do. Whereas most of us have a pretty deep insecurity. Maybe it's an insecurity about how we look or what we know or what we don't know or where we've been from or whatever. There's stuff we don't want people to see, to your name and story. And it's interesting, and this thought I've been having a lot lately as I talk to people who, seem so strong, but it's like, you got to get past that. You got to get beyond that. You got to get to that insecurity and understand you're insecure because you're trying to do it on your own. And when you talk about not bringing anything to God, or it's an empty slate, that's where my mind goes. Is I've got to get to the point where it's not about me anymore. I'm not. Good works should happen on the other side of salvation. We work because of what God's done in our life. But as long as I feel like I need to do something, God's going to stand back and go, all right, when you're done trying, when you're done trying to fill that hole, when you're done trying to cover up that insecurity or that brokenness or that hurt or that pain or that loss or that past, when you're done with that, then we can actually move forward. But not until you're done trying to make it happen on your own.
Probably why the scriptures talk about how, and Paul says, I die daily.
Yeah.
That's the only way forward is you got to die to self, and it's being a living sacrifice.
Yep.
And Dale Moody talks about how, there's something funny about those living sacrifices is they tend to like to try and crawl off the altar.
Right.
It's like, hey, we're all down for signing up for that. Like, make me a living sacrifice. And then,
I'm gone.
You go on the altar and you're like crawling away. Like,
Yeah. Turns out that's a place you can die, is right there on that altar.
Yeah.
I talk often about Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through really 4, but 1 says we have to lay aside what? Both the weight and the sin. In order to run the race that God's called us to run. And that's the crazy thing about emptying ourselves and saying, God, you can use me. It's easy to point at the sin.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I shouldn't go back to the house and get into that keg I've got hidden at my parents. I shouldn't go do this with this girl. I shouldn't, whatever. That's sin. I need to get rid of that. But there's so much other stuff that's not necessarily sin, but they're weights that are keeping me from being used by God or hearing his voice or, those get in the way, sometimes in bigger ways than what we classify as sin. They just keep us from being used by God because I can hang on to them. They're mine.
Yeah, and those little pet sins, they grow. There's that story of that guy that he raised a hippo from such a little tiny football-sized hippo, and he kept feeding it, and it grew, and it grew. And this little pet sin of his, eventually it ate him, it killed him.
Yeah,
and that's how, those sins can be. That's why you got to deal with them. And one of the things I was just thinking of with that Hebrews 12 passage is, Jesus, he endured the cross for the joy that was set before him.
Right.
And that's how you get through, some of those tough moments as a believer is it has to be a joy forward looking, because it's nuts when you look at James and he talks about count it all joy when you fall into various trials.
Yeah.
It's like, sounds like a great game plan prior to the pain and the trials. Then you get in it and you're like, okay, like if somebody quotes this to me right now, I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
But the joy, it's not that you're supposed to be enjoying
you're not excited
the trial.
about it, right?
It's just knowing what this trial is going to produce. And that's always been sort of my mentality, if I could preach to myself when I start going through various trials, is the self-talk is just, preaching God's word to yourself. It's like Jesus was able to endured the cross for what? For the joy that was set before him. He was sweating drops of blood prior to that. There's nothing he's enjoying about the approach of the cross. He's asking God, if there's any other way, like not my will, but your will be done. Nothing enjoyable about the cross itself, but he knew that through this, it's going to produce a way of salvation. And whatever trial we go through, we just have to know that God's still on the throne, so that he allowed it. And we will look back from the future and we will go, okay, it makes sense. And I need to have faith in that. Like his past faithfulness is what I have confidence in, like the character of God. He's going to get me through whatever, this trial is, because that's the thing. Once you become a Christian, it's not like you suddenly, like everything just coalesces and comes together.
Sometimes it gets worse for a while.
I think my life got even more messy after I came to faith in Christ. And I kind of would have appreciated somebody in the follow-up just letting me know,
hey, stand by.
That the storm is on its way.
What practically changed in your day-to-day as you go back to the teams and now you're a Christian and you're trying to navigate this? How did that look for you? How did that look for the people that you were around?
I think it's different for everybody, right? As far as like, it was amazing. Like it was almost like a miracle of how God cleaned up my language without trying. Like I literally cursed like a sailor. I remember times where
as a sailor,
out in public, and I would just have such a foul mouth and not even realize it. And I have parents correcting me, like in front of, like, hey, my kids. And I felt bad. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
And then like 15 seconds later, I'm thinking I'm going to like stop, and they'd be like, hey, my kids, I slipped out again. I'm sorry.
Right.
So that was one of the like instantaneous, like obvious ones. Language cleaned up, obviously got away from the drinking and the revelry. I told the guys on my team, like, hey guys, I want to let you know something. Like I became a Christian. And I remember they were like, oh, good. Good for you.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure they're thinking like, yeah, that guy probably could use a little like spiritual phase.
Right.
And I think though, the more it stuck, the more it was a little bit of an irritating thing with some of them. And, just if you're not in Christ, you don't really understand those that are. And so they start kind of questioning, like, if you're really this like Bible thumping Jesus freak now, like, how do I know that you can do what you need to do when you need to do it? How do I know you're going to cover my back? Isn't it like thou shalt not kill? And, I'm trying to explain to them, well, oh no, actually the Hebrew word, and they don't care about any of that,
So I've had a lot of conversations with parents who have kids that are going into the military, some Christian kids who go into the military, and it's always that conversation is, how do I live out my faith in front of this group of people who not only are they not Christians, but they're in the military for reasons, and then we spend 90% of our lives training to do this very violent job. How do you walk through that?
I think sometimes people look at, and I had to walk through it, right? Like after I got saved, I'm like, what is it to be a Christian? And then also be in the military and be willing to use like lethal force. Like, is this okay? Like I need to do some
because that's
a
real question with your team, whoever it is, your platoon, whatever. They need to know that you're like, I get that, but you need to be able to do this job because the consequences of not doing your job is somebody's not coming home.
I mean, literally the example that was brought to me that they couldn't comport or wrap their mind around is like, how is it now that you say you can't go into, say, this club where there's going to be naked women? You can't look at naked women, but you can take life?
Like,
they're like, that doesn't make sense. And that's where I'm like, no, the Hebrew word in the Old Testament.
Which again, no one cares about,
rasak, and it's not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not murder.
Correct.
And there's a difference between, taking innocent, shedding innocent blood. And, Ecclesiastes talks about how there's a time for everything. And one of those times is there is a time to kill. I think what people will turn to is Jesus' Sermon on the Mount when he says, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. And so aren't you supposed to turn the other cheek? But I think that what Jesus is teaching right there is, he's teaching you shouldn't return evil for evil. In other words, you don't try and settle, the score by getting some revenge. He's certainly not talking about not defending yourself. And one way he's not being literal right there is because in that same context, he's saying if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out.
Take it out.
And cast it from you. Or if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And then later, he actually tells his disciples, when he sent them out on a mission before, he sent them basically without a gear list. But now he's given them a gear list. He's telling them, bring your sandals. What are those for? For walking on. Bring a money bag. What's that for? For putting your money in. Bring a knapsack. What's that for? For putting your belongings in. I sent you out without a sword before. Now, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and get one. He says that in the Gospel of Luke, and they're like, look, Lord, here's two. So if all of these items have practical usages, right? Sandals for walking on, money bags, for the money, and, knapsack. What's the sword for? Are we going to spiritualize that one? It's for self-defense.
Right.
And so I think that there's good biblical precedent to say that we are supposed to be defenders, and especially defenders of defenseless people.
Yeah.
I don't think Jesus would expect you to allow an intruder to come into your house and harm your wife and children and be a pacifist.
Right.
That would actually be the more greater evil. Like, you are more evil if you step back and allow that to happen. It's like those words that all that's required for evil to triumph is for good men to stand back and do nothing.
Do nothing, right.
And so we're not supposed to spread Christianity by the sword. That's why Jesus says, my kingdom's not of this world, lest my servants would fight. Yeah. But at the same time, we are supposed to be protectors.
That's good. And I think if you're in that situation as a Christian in those environments, it's being clear. It's having that clarity around it and understanding what that is. And then I think it's also standing up and saying, as a Christian, there are people who question in their hearts or minds, if not out loud, whether or not I'm going to do my job well. And so there's an added layer of, I need to be very good at what I do. I need to be very precise and earn the trust of these people who are wondering, all right, well, this has changed. Is this going to impact how we operate or how we function?
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a little bit of a friction.
Yeah.
That's just, Jesus wasn't frictionless when he walked this earth. There was nobody that could do it better and be more like attention to detail than Jesus. And even still, he was on a collision course with so many. Yeah. And so no matter what, there's just those that if they're not in Christ, right, by way of metaphor, they're not in the light, they're in darkness. Well, Jesus says, we love let your light so shine before men, they may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. But, there's a flip side to being light too. It's like the same sun that melts wax hardens clay. It's the same light-bearing source consistently, but it has a different response based off of the recipient. Jesus also says the light has come into the world, but men love darkness rather than evil. And for everyone practicing evil hates the light and doesn't come to the light lest their deeds should be exposed. So you come into some platoon shining your Christian light. Some might have a heart that's melted by it like that wax, and they go, I want to know more. Others might really be irritated by it. They might have that heart of clay that's hardened by it. Yeah. And, you're going to have both responses, whether you're in a team, whatever team you're on. Could be just out in the corporate world, the construction world. Expect it. And Jesus says, in this life, you will have trouble. And he says, if they hated me, they're going to hate you. We're not better than him. He's the teacher. He's the master. He says, if they've called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they call those of his own household? Yeah. And he makes that point. A servant is not above his master, nor a disciple above his teacher. So he's the master. He's the teacher. They did it to him. You're doing something wrong, maybe, if you're not experiencing some collision or friction in terms of what you're doing. So the hope is win them over to Christ, be salt and be light. And you're going to have two different responses, I think, if you're doing it right.
That's good. Yeah. And I think the thing that trumps all of it is when you then finally deploy and even those who may not like your faith or may have, we use persecution very, very loosely, right? Sure. But they come at you with whatever and they try to make you feel bad. Well, now they see how you execute your job, how you do the thing you're called to do or you're supposed to do in those environments. So let's transition then to that deployment. You go to Iraq. You're in Iraq?
Yeah, I ended up Iraq. Last deployment.
Yeah, your last deployment. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So
or a lot, however much you want.
Whatever. While we're over there, we're working with the ISOF, which Iraqi Special Operation Forces, and it's like the advise and assist, and just helping them do close quarters combat, train them up, how to plan operations. The goal is to find these guys that are making the suicide vests and the roadside bombs and caches, and while we're out there operating with them, I'd say everything was going pretty good for the whole deployment. It was the last operation that got the most hairy. We decided that, we're not really sure if these guys are ready for us just pass the baton and leave. Why don't we try and make this final op like a sort of graduation operation? We'll let them plan the whole thing from the ground up, and we'll go out with them, and we'll be there just in case things, go crazy. And so they do their own, little intel. They got their sources, and they find this guy that they're looking into him. He's an Iraqi policeman. He wears the uniform by day, but at night, lo and behold, he's, one of these bomb makers that we're looking for. And so they put it all together, and, they've got the plan, and they want to do this direct assault. Looks good, and everything checks out. And then they had a really weird request. They said they felt like they got shot at more than team guys do, and they thought they figured out why. So we're like, okay, why? And they say, it's the color of your uniforms. We're like, well, really, the color of our uniforms, not the way, we shoot, move, and communicate. Nothing to do with tactics. It's just the mere color of our uniform. And you can see on their faces, they're convinced of it. So their request was, would you be willing to take off your American code uniforms, and we have some ISOF uniforms for you that you could put on? So all I was thinking was like, that would be a cool souvenir to take home, sure, let's dress up.
Yeah.
And so we dressed up like them. We actually stripped all the American colors off of our Humvees. We didn't go out in our RG33s, because they don't have those. So we really were blending in, with this ISOF group. They had a reputation. They're called the Dirty Brigade. And so we're painted up like them. We're got uniforms like them, and we're rolling out. But what we didn't know is that this guy essentially knew that we were coming, all along. And so as we go pulling up to his house, and in my mind, I'm already celebrating. I'm behind the 50 cal, standing up in the turret, and I'm thinking, this is it. Yeah. This is the last one.
We're going home after
I'm already daydreaming of just a matter of days from now, I'm going to be back in my hometown, Huntington Beach, surfing in the ocean. Yeah. But what we didn't know is we were being set up that whole time. And so as we pull up, we just start getting shot at from 3 different barricaded, directions. And, it's tick, 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 troops in contact. And, I appreciate about my assault leaders in the chaos. He had that ability to have that calmness and coolness. It wasn't panic or screaming over the radio. I'll never forget how cool, just casual he was. He's just like, my bullets are snapping overhead, impact. We didn't even have all the guys out of the vehicles yet. When we got back to base, we're looking at literally the door handles were getting shot up. So you got half the guys out, half the guys trying to get out into the fight, but the doors are getting shot up.
Yeah, wow.
I'm standing up. I've got, rounds snapping overhead, and I could see, because they're using tracer, I could see where it's coming from, 3 different directions. And it's choose a direction to go in right now. But in that chaos, he's just like, all right, boys, we're going to get out of here alive. I just need you to push left. So push left, tactically speak, without giving away a lot. It's we're going to go forward, and we're going to flank from the left. And I think that whole calmness is, contagious. That was contagious right there, because he could have really set the tone the other way around. Yeah. And part of our SEAL creed, it says an ability to control your emotions and actions regardless of the circumstances. Because if you don't have that ability, and especially if you're in a leadership position, and everyone's in a leadership position to some degree, it could just be even in just your own household. Eventually you're going to get struck with some type of bad news. Everything could go from being great to now you got this phone call that hits you, and you got to break some news to the wife or the kids. Everything can change. And if you're, running around with a panic falling apart at the seams, what are you doing to your family? You've become a liability. But if you have that ability to control your emotions and actions regardless of the circumstances, it doesn't guarantee a successful outcome, but at least what you're doing is you're setting everybody else up, for, I guess, sort of the preconditions for them to be able to do what they do best in those moments rather than panic. And so we're just doing our thing, heavy offense. We're probably just going to try and get out of here, but make them think that 10 of us is 100 of us. Yeah. And we're shooting, moving, communicating. We end up getting that overwhelming firepower, killing those that wanted to fight it out to the death, driving back those that didn't want to fight anymore. And we actually end up getting into the house, and the decision was made, let's get this guy. And so we actually, we got him. Yeah. And so he was wounded, but still alive. And again, look, Christian side of things, this is the big difference between, us and them, as it were, over there, not just Christianity side, but I would say that the ethic or the morals that the teams operate on. We preserve life wherever possible. When this guy was no longer a lethal threat, what do? We just finish him off and let God sort it out? No. We saved him. Like I was one of the guys that, you don't volunteer for it, but voluntold, pick them up and carry them. We carried them into our own hospital.
Yeah.
And so like the last thing I ever did in Iraq was carrying one of these guys into our own hospital to save his life, which is like the last thing I ever imagined I'd be doing.
Yeah.
Especially after watching what they had done to my mentor, on TV before. Yeah. There was a young guy that was full of hatred that I didn't have before. I had murder in my heart. I wanted that revenge.
Yeah.
And now fast forward, here I am operating in the same province that my mentor is operating in. For all I know, this guy was probably celebrating that day when they were celebrating, his death along with 3 others, and they're mutilating their bodies and hanging them upside down from the Euphrates River Bridge. And I'm watching that on TV as they're chanting in Arabic, Fallujah is the graveyard of Americans. And now I've got like one of these guys, I'm carrying him, and it hit me. Like, this guy is so lucky I became a Christian, because I don't know how I would have handled a situation like this, like prior to that. Yeah, but I remember one of the guys on my team that was giving me a really hard time just before that operation about the Christianity thing. He's just like, you know what, Williams, because I was short timing it at that point. This is going to be my last deployment. He's like, it's probably a good thing you're getting out. I'm like, oh yeah, why? And he's just like, oh, because, you're just like this Bible God freak. And like, how do I know, man? How do I know you could like cover my back if you need to?
Right.
But the irony is that night, he was pinned down and they're calling for help.
And you were the one that
it was our Humvee that pulled right in front of him to provide that cover.
Right.
And they're lasering on the wall where they wanted me to shoot. So I'm laying it down and he's screaming as it's, I got the 50 cal going.
Yeah.
And he's screaming, yeah. He didn't know who was up. He goes, who is that up there? And I'm like, it's Williams. Like, there you go, buddy.
That's what I always say, doing a good job, that silences most people.
Yeah.
Right? Just do your job. Yeah, that's incredible. And then coming home from that deployment, that was your last deployment, and then you got out of the...
Yeah, I got to do a little bit of instructing at Buds, which was pretty cool. Yeah. I got to put one class through a whole week. It's just neat to see it from the other side.
Yeah. I would like for you to talk about your mentor, and, I didn't start with how did you become a SEAL, and you can tell as much of that story as you'd like to, but I'd love to hear you talk about legacy and making decisions and living with maybe the actions or the life of other people in mind.
Yeah.
And that's so important because we get caught up in this, well, it's all about me and, what I'm doing. And I've heard you talk about people that quit at Hell Week or whatever because they just don't have that why clearly in their mind. And so, can you talk about some of that again, as much as that as you like to tell? I know it's a hard story probably to tell.
I want to honor him. That's what I like to do now. That's what I've realized is like there's the death that he died, but then there's a second death that I will never allow to happen. That would be like the death of his memory.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus talks about the woman with the alabaster ointment and people were ridiculing over what she was doing. And he said, wherever the gospel is preached, this woman's story will be memorialized and told. I realized that, I have the opportunity to be a mouthpiece and share his story, rather than just kind of let it fade through the sands of time. But Scott Helvenston, he's an extraordinary Navy SEAL. Like literally, he holds records that other SEALs, never held. And I had a funny first meeting with him because I didn't know it was kind of a setup. Because what I did when I wanted to be a SEAL, like when I came up with the idea, I was failing out of junior college at the local community college. I was
sounds right.
Passing
every SEAL I know is failing out of junior college.
I just couldn't do it. I was just surfing all day, partying, just wasting away. All
that
my
part
peers,
actually does sound right. Yeah.
All my friends are they're passing me by. And I didn't know what I want to do, with my life. And, it's been said that if you aim at nothing, you will hit it. And I was aiming at nothing and I was hitting that one pretty good. And I pull in that school parking lot one day. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, man, I'm turning out to be a loser. And I don't want that.
Yeah.
So sometimes the greater the need, the greater the result. I really felt like my back was up against the wall and I'm brainstorming, like, what am I going to do with my life to turn this around?
Yeah.
And first idea actually was to go become an Alaskan crab fisherman. And I almost settled on that. And then the other idea was to join the military and become a Navy SEAL. And if you think about it, the reasons, right, of like my why at that time was pretty weak. It was self-serving.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that those reasons matured along the way, because if it just stayed what it started, I don't think that it would have been enough to get through.
Why SEALs, when you thought about I need to go into the military. Why was that the direction?
Because everyone knows they're the best.
Oh, good night.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Oh boy. All right. We're done.
I wanted to go. My dad used to tell me about, Navy SEALs.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
if we were ever at a swimming pool, I'd be slipping in pretending, I was a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
It was probably the influence of my dad telling me,
It's because you were a surfer in Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
If you'd been a surfer in Oceanside, it would have been straight up Marine Corps. So
yeah, maybe so.
Is your location. Yeah.
It was probably that Navy SEALs movie too, with Charlie Sheen. And then I had read Rogue Warrior too. That was a book that, I was not a reader. And I read that book cover to cover. And so the idea was, the seed thought was in my head.
Right.
And I always thought about how cool that would be.
Right.
And that day in the parking lot, I thought, who is to stop me? Like, nobody's actually stopping me.
Right.
And then I thought about the why am I not pulling the trigger on that? I think it's the fear of telling everyone I'm going to go try and do this and then not making it and having to live with that humiliation. But it's like that Theodore Roosevelt quote. It's like, basically better to have tried and failed than to have not tried at all. Yeah. It's like, the one thing worse than failing is to be those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Right.
And so I'm just like, I'm going to go for it and I will die before I quit. I had that mentality, like, I will die before I quit.
Yeah.
And so I go home and I tell my dad first thing, Dad, I got some bad news and good news. And I'm framing it like, the bad news is I'm failing out of school. All this time you thought I was going, I wasn't really going, because no one's calling home from junior college to tell mom and dad. He goes, okay, the good news? I'm like, it's all right, Dad, I got a plan. I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. Like, kind of like you're looking at him.
You should have started off with the Alaskan fisherman thing, so you could have then pivoted to Navy. No, just kidding. Just kidding about that. It's Navy SEAL, really, actually.
And so you could put yourself in his shoes. I do. It's like, here's your son that hasn't demonstrated the discipline it takes to even make it through the local community college. And now he's informing you, but it's okay because I'm going to go off and be a SEAL.
Right.
So I'll never forget his talk to me. He's telling me, Chad, joining the military is not like anything you've ever done in the past. This is not playing ball. This is not skateboarding. This is not attending the local community college that when you decide you're over it, you could just stop. He says, if you join and maybe then you find out it's not for you, or suppose you quit and you don't make it through SEAL training, just to be clear about something, you will still be in the military. And you're probably going to pick up a job like chipping paint off some boat off the coast of Japan. Yeah. Man, those words stuck with me.
And that's true too. I've seen guys doing that and like, how'd you get here? Well, I went through buds and didn't make it.
I literally just met a guy, felt bad because I shared that at an event and he came up to me afterwards. He goes, I literally was that guy.
That's my story, yeah.
He goes like, I literally was
I've definitely met
off of a boat in Japan.
I remember being on deployment in Okinawa and you're on a ship and you see some of these jobs. I'm like, dude, the Navy's terrible.
Yeah.
And so I'd ask them, how'd you, I was going to be a SEAL or I was going to do whatever. And this is where I ended up.
Yeah. It's a great recruiting tool because they set guys up with, the SEAL Challenge, the SEAL Challenge contract. We guarantee you your opportunity to try.
Yeah.
And it's a win-win because if they make it, well, they got another SEAL.
Yeah.
If they don't make it, we've got a lot of people that we could go fill undesignated positions that nobody wants to do.
Right.
Nobody's signing up to say, like, I want to be a chip painter, paint chipper.
Yeah. Or clean the head at 3 in the morning.
Undesignated. And so, I needed that talk from my dad, though. That was perfect for me. It might have seemed harsh. I don't know. But to me, it was like a motivational speech. It was like, man, I know my actions don't look good right now. So far, bad track record, but my actions will speak louder than words. So I'm preparing. I'm just bolted down on it. I'm the kind of guy, if you say, I don't know if you could do that. If I really believe, like, I know what reverse psychology is, but if I believe that I see it in you, like, you really think I can't do that? I'm bolting down on it. I got to do it even more. And so as I'm doing all this preparation, the running, swimming, pull-ups, push-ups, I remember he invited me into his room to talk one day, and he says, so you really want to do this, huh? And I'm thinking he sees it. I'm like, yeah, Dad, I want to be a SEAL. He goes, great. Well, I set up a workout for you with a Navy SEAL. Check out my computer screen. I'll never forget kind of panning the head over and thinking to myself, my dad doesn't know any Navy SEALs, and you don't just ring one of these guys up, especially in the early 2000s.
Right.
So I'm like, what is this? And all I read in this email, it just says, can Chad come out and play tomorrow? And I'm like,
So your dad just communicating with somebody online? And, yeah.
I'm like, Dad, play. Like, you met some guy off the internet who says he wants to play with me.
He's not a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, you're arranging this meeting in a beach parking lot in California. Yeah. And he's like, oh, no, he's a SEAL. And I'm so skeptical. But I'm like, okay, if you really want me to go, I guess I'll go. Well, I go. It's Oceanside, California.
How'd your dad connect with him?
He found him somehow. I think that Scott was doing some like workouts, like amphibious athletics back then, some programming. And so he had like a way to email and reach out. I think he reached out on his website.
That's crazy.
And so he was training some guys to go in. He's kind of doing some of the mentor stuff. And I mean, when I got there, he spots me, points his finger at me. You, Chad. I look at this guy thinking like he does look the part. He looks like something Michelangelo carved out, and I'm like, yes, sir. He's like, all right, Bubba. And I became Bubba, like from that point forward in life. He's like, get on over here. He's got me dropped down, doing push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups, and he sends me off on this run and just kind of compress things. He said he'll catch up with me on that run. Set me off out into the wetlands. Well, 15 minutes into the run when he's supposed to be there, I'm looking back, not seeing him. And I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I'm too fast for this Navy SEAL, right? I'm like this arrogant, kid. Sure. And I look back again, and it's like a scene out of Terminator 2 where, the bad guy like morphs into those knife hands that could chase down the moving vehicle. Right. Like there was no keeping away from this guy. He was like a canine let out of the back of a squad car, the way he closed in on me. And he brushes right past me, and I thought, that's it. He's going to leave me in the dust. That's when he just planted down on a dime, turns around, and I'm just greeted by his fist going right into my stomach, just clotheslined me right on the spot. Yeah. And I remember that feeling of just the wind getting completely knocked out of me as I'm just in the air, and I see beautiful blue Southern California sky, and then I'm hitting the ground, and then all this dirt coming up all around, and like the nightmare just begins as he's jumping on top of me.
So then you thought back to that email and thought,
oh, I literally
maybe he really is
like
he's a predator out here.
Yeah, he's ragdolling me. I still remember, it's in my head, the sound of just the threads of my shirt ripping and feeling as he's screaming in my face, the spit flying out, just landing on me. And I'm thinking to myself, like some guy my dad met off the internet. Right. I'm thinking like human predator.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to like survive the moment, like live through this as he's screaming. And I don't understand the words coming out because he's just going nuts. But then these words came through. He says, you want to be a Navy SEAL? You better stay 3 paces behind me. And it was just a moment in my life that just clicked. I realized this is it and this is for real. Yeah. And it just hit. I had this thought of if I quit right now, that's it for me. I will forever be a quitter. Like the way I respond right now is going to affect the trajectory of the rest of my life.
Yeah, well.
And so he got up and he said it one more time, 3 paces, and he turns and takes off, and I'm making all the weird growling noises because I got the wind knocked out of me. So I'm like, oh.
Right.
But I locked in on his heels. And I will just say that what took place over the next handful of miles, I have never suffered like that. Even after going through SEAL training, I could look back on that as the most difficult singular workout. It was beyond a workout. It was just a punishment, a beatdown session, this encounter with this Navy SEAL, Scott Helvenston. But we finally got to a point where it came to an end. He circles up and he's pacing back and forth. And I mean, he looks like he wants to fight. And I don't know what's going on in his head. He's just like, just ragdolling me. So I'm thinking, don't set this guy off. Like no direct eye contact. I'm trying to just keep him in my peripherals. And he breaks this really awkward tension by pointing at me for a second time that day. And he goes, hey, if we would have gone another mile or 2, would you have stayed with me? And I thought about it, and I just told him what came from the heart. I said, Scott, I'll die before I quit.
Yeah.
And he gets this smile on his face, and he goes, great, you want to meet up again for the workout tomorrow? And now I'm thinking, like, what am I dealing with right now? I'm thinking, like, are we going to address the flashback that happened on the trail? Right. Like, we're not even going to talk about that? Right. But I thought, don't bring it up, because I don't want to, like, set this guy off. Well, come to find out, it was all a big setup. You know, my dad had gotten on the phone with him prior to that, and he told him, my son wants to be a SEAL, but he has no idea what he's signing up for. Would you do me a big favor? You know, would you basically try and beat it out of him, like crush him, beat the desire of becoming a SEAL out of him? Yeah. And that was what his reply was, can Chad come out and play tomorrow? But I guess after that, he gets on the phone. We all had lunch one day in Oceanside together, and that's where they filled me in months later. On the whole backstory, Scott got on the phone and said, look, I know what you want me to do, and I gave it a go, but I think your son might have something to work with here. I'd like to start working with them. Yeah. So from that point forward, I got to meet up with this Navy SEAL, Scott Helvenston, and thankfully it was never a beat down. Again, it became more of a building up. I moved on from being Bubba to suddenly one day he's really taking me under his wing. He's calling me Junior. And like I said, Scott's an extraordinary Navy SEAL, all kinds of records. He's the youngest man to ever make it through SEAL training. He graduated training. He was a SEAL by 17 years old.
Really?
That's only possible because of the rough upbringing that he had. And that's the record on the books.
Wow.
He grew up in over dozens of foster homes, passed around. So the military took him at a very early age as a teenager. So he completed it all by 17.
Wow.
World champion, pentathlete. He is the fastest Navy SEAL on the SEAL training obstacle course. A funny one on TV. He's the only man at the time to beat the Beast on a program called Man vs. Beast, where they built an obstacle course, since that's his expertise, and they challenged him. And at the time, the Beast always wins on the show, whatever it is, strong man versus whatever, gorilla. They say, we hear you're something special. Would you be willing to go up against the Beast on Man vs. Beast? They trained a chimpanzee to run the obstacle course. Like, who on earth is going to beat a chimpanzee to an obstacle course? But Scott being Scott, he's like, yeah, I'll race the monkey. And so he shows up. And it's this huge upset. He not only beats him, he pulls the head of this monkey on the monkey bars, and they had him rematch it. He beat him again.
No way.
And then they didn't want to air the program, because he won, but they did reluctantly. But I remember he was telling me one day, he's like, Junior, all those other programs, Man vs. Beast, where the Beast wins and the human loses, they re-air those programs. He goes, they only played my program
showed mine once.
one time.
Right.
So you can imagine, what it's like to get trained up. By this guy. He's become like a second father to me. And he trained me up. And so it got to a point where it was time to get that ball rolling and sign up. And I did. And it was the depth program, delayed interest program. So I had a little bit of time before I was going in. And Scott took this opportunity, as he put it, to go overseas one last time. I remember we were sitting in a jacuzzi one night after a workout. We'd wrap up usually by the pool, and he was kind of contemplating. He's like, hey, Junior, I've kind of got this opportunity. I'm not sure if I'm going to take it or not. And, without getting too into the details, basically it was an opportunity to make a good amount of money overseas, but dangerous.
Yeah.
And he could make what he needs to make, like in a short amount of time, or he can kind of keep doing what he's doing, and it's going to be a long time before he kind of gets out of the rut he's in. He goes, what do you think I should do? And I'm just, an immature, like, do it, Scott. You're going to kill so many bad guys. Tell me all about it. Because I'm reading about, like, the kill ratio in Vietnam, 100 to 1, and Rogue Warrior. And I remember the look he gave me. Like, I just realized how immature what I just said. He didn't even have to say anything. He just gave me this look like, this kid. Yeah. So he decides.
He may run fast. But
yeah, he decides to do it. And he's invincible in my mind. I mean, I've watched him free climb without any anchors, or ropes, just heading up there just to make a way for me to climb up, just do inhuman things. He's a cat that will always fall on his feet. Like, this guy's invincible.
Yeah.
And he gets on the phone with me. He says, all right, Junior, I'm going to go do this thing. He's referring to going off to Iraq. He was going to be doing contracting with Blackwater, which, like, I didn't know what that was, before.
Yeah.
He says, but I want you to know something I've never told anyone I've ever trained before. And so these words stuck. I mean, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Like, send it. He says, I know you're going to make it through SEAL training. And so to hear that from my mentor that I loved and revered so much, it's like I couldn't wait to make him proud and do this. And so he leaves, and now he's gone in Iraq, and I've got just a handful of days before I go off to boot camp.
Yeah.
And as I'm waking up one day, just kind of burning off this little bit of time, I'm thinking I'll just do the workout Scott, trained me to do. Well, I see, like, Scott on the TV. And my first thought was, Scott's been on TV plenty of times. Man vs. Beast, combat, like missions, like all these reality shows.
It wouldn't be unusual to see a clip of his.
And it's just a smiling picture of him on TV. Typical shot they might use of somebody, a still image, before they invite them onto a program. So I'm looking at this thinking, what's Scott doing on TV right now? I didn't know he's going to be on TV. Like, maybe he had something before he was going to go. I thought he was supposed to be gone. And that's when I saw on the lower third of the screen his birth date, followed by that dash, March 31st, 2004. And that just was not comporting in my head. And then it switches from this smiling image of him to now it's, boom, graphic video footage of a vehicle engulfed in flames, which turned out to be the vehicle that he was in, along with 3 other Americans, as this group of insurgents had ambushed it, and they're videotaping everything that they were doing. And so now the media has a hold of this footage, and they're playing this montage of scenes as now I'm watching Like the guy that I was just sitting passenger seat next to back home in Oceanside with his arm up there on the wheel, driving along. And I'm thinking like, what an incredible just opportunity for me to get to be with him. And I remember the sun coming through the windshield and thinking, I want my arms to be like Scott's one day. You know, I'm just like taking it in. Like, I know this is unique. And now I'm looking at those same arms through a TV screen thousands of miles away, and they're just lifeless as he's in the street. And you've got this angry Iraqi mob surrounding him and these others with sticks and rods, and they're doing everything they can to try and mutilate their bodies. And they find rope and they wrap it around their legs and they hook them up to the vehicles and they go dragging them through the streets of Fallujah. And I'm watching, just stuck on this TV screen, as this mob is just chanting and they are celebrating. To them, it's like a 4th of July parade. You could just see this glee on their faces. And all I felt was just evil. It felt like entering into me, where whenever I thought about becoming a SEAL, I never played too much thought with the concept of the idea of killing. I always thought about the rock star part. You're going to shoot guns, blow things up, jump out of airplanes. We'll cross that bridge when we get there when it comes to like taking life. I'm not seeking that one out. Like, I'm not only like entertaining the thought, I am hungry for it. I want to get through that TV screen right there, no training, get me over there on a civilian flight, and I will recklessly throw myself at these people to rip their esophaguses out. So I felt. And then it all comes to like him being strung upside down with these others and set on fire. And they're just looking into the camera and chanting with their fists. Fallujah's the graveyard of Americans, with the English subtitles. And so needless to say, you know, that moment, I'll never have the words to describe just what that moment and all the surrounding moments were like. But it is one of those times that it's going to change you as a human being. And, you know, there's, you know, that saying, you know, that adversity, you know, in the teams, part of our SEAL creed, it says we're forged by adversity. That's just the way it is in life, that it's either going to operate as a wing or a weight. The things that you go through, you're either going to let it be a weight that just sinks you, leaves you knocked down. You know, people will see what, you know, some guy got hit with, or a girl, and they go, wow, yeah, they're sunk by that. They're out for the count. There's no resurfacing from that one. Or you find a wing in the moment somehow, which is just really a way to get up, rise to the occasion, you know, what we call being forged by adversity. That's just how it is. Adversity will either be that thing that you allow to cause you to utterly fail, or you will be forged by it. And where that forging process begins is going to be case by case. And I could just say I found it when I was reflecting back on his last words to me on the phone, because I think that's what we all do when we lose somebody unexpectedly. You want to go back to the last time you were with them or the last conversation, because it's like, wow, what did we talk about? It becomes that much more important because that was it. And I remember when he said to me, Junior, I know you're going to make it through SEAL training. That began the forging process. I became just so determined that I'm going to do this for so much more. I'm going to do this in honor and memory of my mentor. I want to walk in his footsteps, and I want that revenge. The revenge was a part of it. And so thankfully that revenge that fuel didn't stay forever, right? Like the Lord got a hold of me before I deployed, but it was a hatred in my heart.
Did you have a moment, a time, a process that you went through to transition from, I want to live in a way that honors him? So that's where you are now, it sounds like. But from, I want to avenge him, or I want to make this thing right. Was there a process you went through to go from one to the other?
Well, a lot of it was avenge him until, you know, I came to Christ and I realized that type of bitterness is not right. I'm not supposed to have it, you know. That was still, I'm dealing with the human side, the flesh that Paul talks about. That's always there. It's always a war that's going on inside. Oh man, it was like just when I thought I was free and clear, I passed the test, as it were, because I really felt like I was tested when I had to carry one of these guys into our own hospital. And I'm having like this discussion inside of my head of, you know, for all you know, this guy's probably celebrating on that day. You know, there's a part of you that's just like,
And if I mean, to be transparent, if I took his life right now, no one's going to ever say anything.
Right. It's like
there is zero consequence to me ending this guy right now.
Start entering in. There's this battle. And so to get him off of my hands into the hospital, because we like literally carried him in, me and one other guy, it was like, all right, passed that test. I didn't do something bad. Felt good. And now we just had like a few days to go before we're going home. And just before we're going home, I hear that one of the other teams had actually captured the Butcher of Fallujah, who was the mastermind behind what they had done to Scott, and we had him on base.
Wow.
And just when I thought I was free and clear, I found myself battling these like murderous thoughts as a Christian, of like, and it's crazy how the flesh works, and just spiritual warfare, because I have this talk inside of my head, like, no, that's not the right thing to do. Like, oh, you coward. You remember what that guy did to your mentor, and you can't go, and even like, you can't go right that wrong right now. Like, isn't it worth it to go spend the rest of your life in prison just to go, like, just, finish that guy off? And I'm just a war inside of my head. Like, just when I thought I got through the hardest part, those last few nights in Iraq, knowing that this guy was just a matter of hundreds of yards away, maybe, like, I could go in the night and go find him and go, but yeah, it was a battle, but it's not the right thing to do. Jesus says, bless those that curse you, do good to those who hate you, pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Jonah did not want to go preach to the Ninevites, and it was because of how brutal they were.
I'm not sure he ever got over it, though.
No, maybe not.
He did it, but I don't think he ever grew past it.
I mean, I'll just be real. Like when Erica Kirk says, like, I forgive that man. Honestly, I'm not there. I'm like, not me.
Yeah.
I guess that's part of, conforming to the image of Christ. It's like, I need to be more like Christ. I can see where I'm not. I've got some transformation to take place, like definitely major work in progress. So a lot of it was avenge, and then it shifted over towards like honor. But, there's always going to be that tide, the ebb and flow. That's still hard, It's like, that's just the next level Christianity, to be able to bless those that curse you, for Jesus to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Yeah. It's like, all right, Lord, I can't do that. Help me to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that phrase, but for the grace of God, there go I.
Yeah.
We think about, and I don't believe there are coincidences, or that God's not in control. He is in control of where we're born and where we live and where we grow up and our backgrounds and so forth. But none of us are worthy before a holy God without the blood of Jesus Christ, without that relationship that comes from, submitting to our Savior. None of us are worthy. And it's interesting how we can put ourselves in that position of, I need to keep that person accountable to me, or I need to avenge that, or I need to do that because some reason, right? And it's probably a valid reason, I guess, in our minds, but what makes you better than that person?
Yeah.
And I think as we talk to, combat veterans and many others, of course, but that have been in similar situations or circumstances, they've watched their teammates, their friends, people they care about, people they love, killed. There is that thought, I need to avenge this. I need to, but how do you put yourself in that situation? That's Ephesians 4:32, right? Because of Jesus, God has forgiven us. And that applies to all of us everywhere. But transitioning from those feelings that are very natural to us to an understanding of God has put me in this place for a specific reason, and I need to live out this faith. And this is what that looks like. This is what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild to think that the people that were involved in doing some of the most atrocious things, where you could just rack it up in your brain, like, these are savages. Well, they're somebody's baby. They were made in the image of God, and even God wants them to be saved.
Right.
And who am I to say, like, God, you could forgive me, but you can't forgive them.
Right. That's right.
It's not for me to do.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? Like the love of God reaching down. And that's where I see the need. Like that's where I lack. I need some change. But Scott was a huge motivation for me. That was like, he who has a why can endure anyhow. The people that didn't have a very good why, your why is going to get pressure tested when you're going through, especially Hell Week. And I wrote his name on the inside of my hat. I remember looking at, other things that people wrote on the inside of their hats, because the instructors, they provide the white felt markers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They go, hey, basically you guys are about to go through the hardest thing you've ever gone through, and hopefully the hardest thing you will ever go through if you make it through the other end. And they let you write on the inside of your hat, whatever it is, it's going to get you to dig deep when the going gets tough. And I remember looking at the things that others wrote, because we're all looking for inspiration from each other. And anyone that had any type of selfish ambition, it was like narcissistic reasons. It was because of me or I.
Right.
I never saw those guys on the other end of Hell Week. The common themes I saw on the inside of hats of guys that made it was faith and family, friends. So when I was like suffering at my worst and like Hell Week and getting surf tortured, I would just look up at the bill of my hat, all you had to do is dot your eyebrows, past your eyebrows, and I would see Scott Helvenston on the inside of my hat. And my thought process is that you have to take me out of here in a body bag before I ever voluntarily quit on that name. It's not gonna happen. And it didn't. I also had family written on the inside of my hat. And I would think to myself, like, my family is not gonna get a phone call from me telling them when they shouldn't be hearing from me, hey, I didn't make it.
Right.
So instead, I literally wrote the words of what I would say first things over the phone. Hey, I made it.
Yeah.
And so you only go so far for yourself.
Yeah.
But how far are you willing to go for your family? You'll go to the wheels fall off. And then, I also had a scripture on the inside of my hat. I had Philippians 4:13. I could do all things through Christ.
Even though you weren't a Christian?
Of course I would, right? It's like, that's the famous touchdown, grand slam, every Christian athlete. Philippians 4:13.
That's right.
Reality is that passage contextually has nothing to do, with that kind of a thing. But I'm like, I want God on my side too.
Yeah,
so I have the faith, the family, friends. I also have my girlfriend's name on the inside of the hat, which I still have the hat in the house to this day. So it's a little awkward to break out in front of my wife. Just kidding. I married that girl. So I get to keep that hat around the house.
It has a line through it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a big challenge maybe for anyone listening. A good takeaway would be, what is it that you would write on the inside of your hat?
Yeah.
Because that's your why, and that's what's going to get pressure tested. And if it's a good why, it'll stand the test. You'll die before you ever quit on that why. But if it's not any good, it won't stand the pressure. That's why when I first wanted to become a Navy SEAL, my why was selfish ambition, narcissistic. It was a status, a symbol, and it became so much more though along the way.
Yeah.
It became something bigger and greater than self. And that's how everything in life has to be. And those things on the inside of my hat are still the things now to this day. We still go through stuff all the time,
Yep.
For a whole nother podcast, I'm going through it right now. Just what happened in the last week in Huntington Beach. It's crazy. Just betrayal like you wouldn't believe. And that was I've come to realize the worst pain that Jesus felt wasn't necessarily the cross. It was his closest friends abandoning him in his greatest hour of need.
When you don't care what people think about you, you don't care what they do to you. It's when you really care that it hurts the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest things to get over too is you brought up something earlier. We were talking about maybe it was just people's just kind of what they've manufactured, right?
That insecurity that all of us carry. This
insecurity that they have. I heard Mel Gibson say something that I thought hit the nail on the head. And when people talk about greatest fears, they say that public speaking is the greatest fear.
Yeah.
And I've gotten into public speaking. I can see that. It's like. And then I like to go attack that.
Yeah.
But what is it about public speaking? And so he added a little nuance to it. He says what people are most afraid of is public humiliation.
Yeah.
It's not so much being in front of everyone, it's being humiliated in front of everyone. And his point was, I've already gone through that. I've already been humiliated.
Yeah.
So now, there's nothing.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of nothing.
What are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think once you really get out of the way of being concerned about your self-image, and you really do die to self and maybe get publicly humiliated, right? The way that Jesus was, and wrongfully. He was wrongfully publicly humiliated. Never, ever. I mean, we can always say sometimes we've been wronged, but there's still a little sliver. There's a thread of truth maybe to what the others said.
There's always something there. Yeah.
In Jesus's case, there was never a situation where he was more wrong. There was never a person more innocent yet accused of so much.
Yep.
And we say that we want to walk in the footsteps of Christ. We say that we want to be conformed to the image of Christ. It's be careful what you ask for, though, because he will walk you through those experiences. You will share in the sufferings. You will go through the seasons. Yeah. And those things are necessary. He'll take us into fire sometimes that we would never voluntarily go into, but that's what was necessary in order to mold us and shape us into the person that he wants us to be.
That's good.
And, it makes me think of this anonymous poem now that I put to memory one time because I needed to. It goes like this. It says that when God wants to drill a man and thrill a man and skill a man, when God wants to mold a man to play the noblest part, when he yearns with all of his heart to create so great and bold a man that all the world shall be amazed, watch his methods and watch his ways. How he ruthlessly perfects whom he royally elects, how he hammers him and hurts him and with mighty blows converts him into trial shapes of clay, which only God understands. While man's tortured heart is crying and he lifts beseeching hands, how God bends, but he never breaks when it's man's good that he undertakes. And now he uses whom he chooses, and with every purpose fuses him, by every act induces him to try his splendor out. God knows what he is about.
Yeah.
So when you give yourself to God, you say, God, try your splendor out on me. It's like, be careful what you're asking for, because he will bend you, but he won't break you.
Yeah.
He'll put you through the fire. He's the master sculptor. He's got the hammer and chisel out, and he's chipping away. And sometimes big chunks are coming off, and it really hurts. But what we have to do is trust the process. Just like Jesus could go to the cross for the joy that was set before him, just knowing that this momentary suffering or this momentary pain that I'm going through right now, trust the process. The master sculptor has an image in mind. He's going to achieve what he's going for. And so that's really, I think, the key, to get through like the troubles or the trials, and it's just knowing like it's momentary. I love this quote, and I got to go back and watch The Count of Monte Cristo, because it hit me as I was driving in. I'm realizing like I'm kind of like, in a way, I feel like I'm kind of going through a phase of that right now. The story, anyone that knows, the movie, it's like, man, that guy got totally betrayed, thrown into prison. He wanted revenge. He wanted to just get out, get revenge. And he meets this priest in prison, and he's teaching him martial arts and philosophy and theology. And he's thinking about how he's going to use this for revenge. But the priest was trying to tell him, like, no, it's not about like revenge. And one of the lessons he learned, in that was he has this quote where he says, like, life is a storm, young friend. He goes, like, one moment you'll be basking in the sunlight. The next moment you'll be dashed upon the rocks. What makes you a man is what you do when that storm comes. And so it's not about like the revenge at all.
It's
and
the
so
preparation.
just trust the process.
That's
if
good.
you want to be like Christ, you want to walk in his footsteps, it's worth asking that. Be careful what you ask for. And some things you can learn in the Bible just based off of the precepts. You could learn it based off of just the concepts that are there. You read the lines and you understand. But other things, they're not learned propositionally. They're learned experientially. You're going to have to experience it.
That's good.
But, we're going to look back on those times and say, I wouldn't change it. But when you're in it, you're that living sacrifice.
I just want to get through it.
Get me out of here.
I want to get through it. I want to get through it. My dad has, he's used a phrase, and I don't know where he got it from, somewhere he read. But over the years, I remember him saying, those that God uses greatly, he wounds deeply. And he would say this at various times. And man, as I've gotten older and experienced more in my life, you see that God can't use you to these levels without wounding you, we would say that, but allowing you to suffer and allowing you to go through things. And that's James 1, which you brought up earlier.
I fully believe it too.
Yeah. That's good. Well, good, man. Man, there's so much more we could talk about. We're going to need to do another podcast in California.
Yeah.
We'll find a place to sit down and do another one.
I've been thinking about starting something like this, where I'm the interviewer. And
let's do it.
I just tell me the kit to get, get the stuff going.
We'll go look at places in Huntington Beach and find somewhere. But man, I appreciate it. Your book, Seal of God.
That's right.
Where can people get a hold of this? And man, anything else you'd like to talk about? I know you're into a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'd say best place for me is if you got off my website, and I sign all those ones and send it out. So the website, sealofchrist.com.
Yeah.
But they could get it anywhere, like Amazon still sells it. I think it's still like on the shelves in Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. Very cool.
And one final big takeaway maybe just for everyone is, one little reflection I've had about Scott is that he's a reflection of the cross, and others that have laid down their lives and paid the ultimate. Like I think of guys like Mike Monsoor, who was a Navy SEAL. He jumped on a hand grenade and absorbed the blast of that grenade on himself. Why? So others could live. He could have saved himself. My friend Scott, although he was killed and dragged through those streets, he was over there for a purpose. I remember he's talking about, maybe I can make a difference. And so, these guys, they laid down, their lives and they shed their blood for like earthly freedoms. And I think that's such a picture of what Jesus did. It's a reflection of it, that just as Mikey jumped on that hand grenade, it's like Jesus at the cross. He didn't jump on a hand grenade, but what he did is he covered our sin, so that we could live. And my friend Scott, although he was killed and hung from that bridge, ultimately, I would say he was there for freedom's sake. It hit me one day that Jesus was killed and he was hung, wasn't he, from that cross, so we could be set free from sin. So greater love has no one than this, and one that lays down his life for his friends. You could see it in warriors like Mike Mansour and Scott Helvenston, but the greatest of all that we could look to the cross. That's the proper perspective of that King of Kings, that Lord of Lords. He's the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world.
It's good, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chad Williams, thank you. For those of you listening, thank you for listening. Go to YouTube. You can watch there. We're building that out. Check that out. That would be great. And man, a lot more I could say. A lot more I want to say. But I'll just say this. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.